So, it's two back-to-back nights with the same terrible result for the Kraken, but two very different ways of getting there. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where for the second night in a row, the Kraken lose 5-2, this time at home to the New York Islanders. It was a nationally televised, or I guess I should say nationally streamed game on ESPN+, though I think it's safe to say this is one of those where when they scheduled it at the beginning of the season, they were expecting a little bit more relevance from at least one of, if not both of these teams, and certainly is the case where both of these teams at this point in the season have significantly fewer points and wins than they were expecting to have. Though, of course, the big story with this game was going to be the same regardless of how the two teams were playing coming into it, and that being the return of Matthew Barzal to the city of Seattle, where he once played under the very same roof with the Seattle Thunderbirds, of course, of the WHL. Or at least that was the big story locally. Nationally, there might have been a little bit more focus on the fact that Zdeno Chara was tying the record for most games played in the NHL by a defenseman, but we'll stick with Barzal here in Seattle. Meanwhile, as far as the Kraken are concerned coming into this game, again, they are coming off of that loss just the night before, 5-2 again, to the Vancouver Canucks in Vancouver, just across the border. And for that game, it did have a pretty different feel to this one. The Kraken got off to a pretty good start. Outside of the first 11 seconds, they do allow that first goal pretty quick, but bounce back and get 2 goals in the first to have a good first period, and then kind of collapse from there as the game goes along. So coming into this game, after that late collapse and now on a 4-game losing streak, the lines and even defensive pairings, which have been pretty steady, get switched up quite a bit coming into this game. Now, you may have noticed I haven't talked about the lines or defensive pairings as much over the last month or two now, and in large part, that's because they've just been changing so much even during games that I don't know how much it's really worth going over game to game. And honestly, that doesn't really change here, as although the Kraken do come into the game with pretty different looking lines, by even midway through the first period, and as far as the defensive pairings are concerned, very early on in the first period, they're pretty much right back to the lines that we saw against Vancouver, and they're just trying to figure out things that are working at this point with only a few consistencies. On the defense, there is a little bit more consistency, but on the offense with lines, McCann and Eberle pretty much do stick together, and there also is the line of Gord, Yarncroke, and Appleton, who have been playing pretty well together, but even that line gets changed up as this game goes along. And right out of the gates, it's pretty clear that the Kraken might be feeling some of that fatigue on the back-to-back with the travel in between it from Vancouver to Seattle, as the Islanders do take control pretty quick into this game, pushing right into the offensive end off the faceoff, and unlike Vancouver, not scoring off of it, but still getting some early shots off on net, which Grubauer is able to save. Really, the early pressure by the Islanders is pretty much only broken up on a few rare occasions by the Kraken, who occasionally do get the puck into the offensive zone, though they aren't able to create all that much out of it, not getting very many shots on goal, and any shots that they do get on goal are pretty much only coming off of the stick of Morgan Geekie, who has one pretty good look pretty clean early on in the game, though that save is made by Sorokin, and then is able to make a nice play in the neutral zone to steal a pass, and then beat a couple of Islanders players to the net to get a backhanded shot off. That save is a little bit easier for Sorokin, and he's able to come up with that one as well. And at the other end, Grubauer is having to make saves of his own, including a couple of pretty big saves on Barzal, who, it has to be said, at least on the first chance that he got, did get a bit of a rise out of the crowd, who a lot of them were there to see Barzal, even a lot of the Kraken fans, considering a lot of those fans were T-Bird fans, or still are, that watched Barzal play and put up highlights and even win a championship in the WHL with Seattle. In spite of Grubauer's best efforts early on though, which might not be the best phrasing in this particular case, he does eventually let one get past him. It beats him glove side over his shoulder and into the top corner of the net, off the stick of Brock Nelson, who picked up a bouncing puck that came off of the boards and was able to split a couple of Seattle defenders and get the shot off from the slot that kind of seems to catch Grubauer off guard. Either way, it's in the back of the net, and it is a 1-0 lead about halfway through the first for the New York Islanders, now scoring their first goal against the Kraken in 2 games. Of course, with the Kraken getting their first and still to this point only franchise shutout with Grubauer in net against the Islanders right before the All-Star break, in that 3-0 win in New York. At this point, the Kraken, who geeky aside have looked downright sluggish so far in the game, are able to push back at least a little bit against the Islanders and get some time in the offensive zone, but the Islanders, as is their reputation, are able to play strong defensive hockey and prevent the Kraken from really getting any kind of dangerous chances on the Islanders' net. So any few shots that the Kraken do get that actually manage to make it to the net are still saved pretty easily by Sorokin. So as a result, that brief Kraken push is brought to an end, and the Islanders are able to get momentum going back in their favor, helped out a little bit by the Kraken themselves, who can't even get out of their own way. And eventually, that Islanders momentum, 3 minutes left in the first period, does lead to them winning a faceoff in the Kraken defensive zone. It's right out to the point, and the shot on net gets through Grubauer and into the back of the net. But the Kraken catch a break as it's waved off for goaltender interference, as Parise is making contact with Grubauer when the puck gets past him, which is part of what allows it to get into the net. Parise does also deflect it through Grubauer's 5-hole, but still, with the contact, it's going to be waved off. Or at least it's a break that the Kraken catch for a little bit, as the Islanders do challenge the call of goaltender interference, and it doesn't take terribly long for the ref to come back from review with the call that it is a good goal with no goaltender interference, as Gio is pushing Parise into Grubauer, which makes that contact legal, and the deflection that Parise has into the net does count as the goal, so Parise gets the goal here, and the Islanders now have the 2-0 lead. In spite of the Islanders trying to add more, the Kraken are able to get this to the first intermission, just down 2-0. So, unlike that game in Vancouver, this first period has not gone very well, but maybe that means that the Kraken can turn things around as this game gets into the second and third, and they still have plenty of time to come back and end up winning this. Unfortunately, it becomes pretty obvious early on in the second that that isn't going to be the case, as even though the first couple of minutes are fairly uneventful from a shots on goal perspective, the Kraken are still playing pretty slow, sloppy hockey at both ends of the ice. While there are opportunities given to them by the Islanders, they just can't get any passes to connect stick to stick. Any passes that they are having that are connecting are pretty much going tape to skate rather than tape to tape. And the vast majority of the passes are either getting flubbed when they get to the other player or just missing their targets entirely. And honestly, even though it is much more obvious on the offensive end of things that the Kraken are playing pretty sloppy hockey with all those missed passes and failed breakout attempts, they're also playing pretty sloppily in the defensive end as well, which is what comes back to bite them just a few minutes into the second, when Larson puts a puck off the end boards into the corner where Parise is the only player there that can pick it up. He does so and gets a quick crossing pass out in front of the net to Palmieri, and for Grubauer, there's not a whole lot he can do about this one. He makes a good effort getting his legs spread out in front of the net, getting 1 foot to the opposing post, but Palmieri is allowed to skate right into the slot uncontested, right between Dunn and Järnkrok, to get the clear shot off from the slot right through the 5-hole of Grubauer and into the back of the net to give the Islanders the 3-0 lead. For Grubauer, again, he does everything right here, trying to cover as much as the net as possible with that crossing pass. This goal is pretty much just allowed to happen through a series of defensive mistakes by the Kraken. First, Larson putting it into the corner where only Parise is there to pick it up, and then both Dunn and Järnkrok letting Palmieri just go right in between them for the wide open shot from the slot. And if you allow that to happen, it's hard to put it on the goaltender when it gets into the net. And then from there, although both McCann and Eberle do almost create high danger scoring chances, which the Kraken really have not had that very many of to this point in the game, both of those end up coming short. And for the next few minutes, it's pretty much all Islanders. As they say on the TV broadcast, it's pretty much an Islanders shooting gallery on the Kraken net, with Grubauer desperately trying to get all around the Kraken net from one side to the other, out in front, pretty much wherever he can to make as many saves as he possibly can to prevent this game from becoming 4-0 for the Islanders. And of course, eventually it's one shot too many, as Mayfield puts a shot well wide of the Kraken net, but it takes a healthy bounce off the end boards right up next to the net where Sarnak is there to put it into the net before Grubauer can react to the rebound. And the Islanders do end up taking that 4-0 lead. Again, this is another one that I really have a hard time putting too much on Grubauer, especially considering how much work he just did to keep that puck out of the net for as long as he was able to with this Islanders push and all the shots they were getting off on net, even with the ones that were getting blocked. And for the Kraken, this could also be a chance to learn from what the Islanders are doing here offensively, as they're just getting open ice and taking shots off on net when they have the chance to do so. And eventually, a puck takes a bounce off the end boards and Sarnak's in the right place at the right time to put it into the net. Weird how that works. If you just take the shots when you have the chance to do so, eventually one of them might take a lucky bounce either off an end board, off a rebound, or a deflection in front of the net and find its way in. I can certainly say that for Kraken fans, it was pretty frustrating to watch another team do exactly what we wish our team would do offensively. Sure, in this particular game, up until this point, the Kraken really haven't had that much opportunity in the offensive end to get those shots off on goal, which is a whole nother issue, but it's been a problem throughout this season that the Kraken just don't show this willingness that the Islanders are here to shoot the puck when they have the chance to do so. And so, here we are, on a 4-game losing streak, and the Kraken are down 4-0 at home halfway through the second period in a game where, other than Morgan Geekie and Grubauer, who's pretty much been left out to dry so far, they've shown almost no interest in playing this game whatsoever, playing the most sloppy, slow hockey we've seen them play all season, looking not just like the team we saw at the beginning of the season that couldn't get out of their own way, but like a version of that team that is also disinterested in even playing the game in the first place. At the very least, at least the Kraken are able to get the puck into the offensive zone right off the ensuing faceoff, and then it gets frozen, so they're going to get a faceoff in the offensive zone, which is somewhere they really haven't been all that often tonight so far. Of course, there's still the fact that while the Kraken have been relatively even at winning faceoffs over the last couple of months now, it still seems like whenever there's an important faceoff, they aren't able to win those, and when they do lose faceoffs, especially ones in their defensive zone, it ends up turning bad very quickly, which we've already seen happen once this game, with that second goal coming right off a faceoff and the shot going right into the back of the net. This faceoff, though, is at least in the Islanders' end of the ice, so there isn't quite as much danger of that happening, and Järnkrok is able to win the faceoff. It's definitely not a very clean win, and it pretty much only counts as a win for Järnkrok because Gord is able to get control of it, taking it out of the feet of Järnkrok for himself, skating it out to the other side of the faceoff circle towards the slot area, and he just decides to take a shot on net because what the heck, it worked for the Islanders, so why not try? And what do you know, it works! It's a quick kind of half-wrist shot from Gord that doesn't even really have much of a follow-through that I think catches Sorokin off guard and ends up beating him glove side, and really the only way that I think Gord really even gets anything on this shot is just out of pure frustration of how this game has gone so far for the Kraken. And wouldn't you know it, that thing that we just talked about of the Kraken taking shots on goal when they have the opportunity to is exactly what Gord does here, and it pays off with a goal. For Gord, it's his 11th of the season, and although originally it was an unassisted goal, Järnkrok with the one faceoff does eventually get credit for his 11th assist on this goal by Gord, and the Kraken are at least able to prevent the shutout at home. Right after this Gord goal, though, the weirdest thing happens. The Kraken actually start to show something that almost looks like effort for the first time in this game. They're able to get the puck right into the offensive zone and are even able to hold it there for an extended period of time for, again, the first time in this game so far to this point, already halfway through the second period. And eventually, even with a number of shots on goal, including a number of pretty high danger ones that aren't able to go in, the Kraken get kind of a pseudo power play as Cernak's stick ends up breaking, so he has to leave it on the ice, and without a stick, he isn't able to do a whole heck of a lot. At one point, he does kind of do a diving Superman punch of the puck away from a Kraken player, but the Kraken do get that back and continue to hold the zone, getting shot after shot on net, eventually starting to change players off one at a time, holding the Islanders in at their end of the ice, and circling looking for those perfect shots. At this point, they aren't necessarily taking every shot they possibly could, but they have the Islanders in a situation where this is a good chance to try to look for as good an opportunity as you can possibly get. Unfortunately, the Kraken aren't quite able to capitalize on any of those numerous opportunities that they get, pressing pretty much the entire rest of the second period at the Islanders' end of the ice, even after the Islanders are able to clear that 5-on-4.5 chance that the Kraken had with the Sarnak broken stick. The Kraken pushed right back into the offensive zone and held it there once again, having a couple more very good shifts and a few more good chances on net. And although, again, they don't score to make this a more manageable game going into the third, they are able to well over double the number of shots on goal that they had before Gord put that first one into the net. Before Gord scored his goal, the Kraken had just 6 shots on goal through the first half of the game. And now in just the second half of the second period alone, they get another 9 to bring that shot total up to 15, which still isn't fantastic after 2 periods, but with 9 shots on goal in the last 10 minutes of the second, it is a pretty significant turnaround from that first half of the game. The good news is that much like how the Islanders were able to maintain momentum through the first intermission into the second period, the Kraken are able to do the exact same here with the second intermission, coming strong right out of the gates in the third, once again pressing in the Islanders' end of the ice, looking for that second goal. And Gord gets a very good look to do so early on in the second, but misses the net. Then though, right on the very next shift, Cheyenne wraps the puck around and into the side of the net to give the Kraken that early third period goal. And you know what? Maybe there's actually a chance the Kraken could make this comeback happen, as it's now 4-2 with a lot of time left and the Kraken rolling in this game. And the Kraken certainly aren't letting up either, as right after the ensuing faceoff, they push right back into the offensive zone, looking for that third goal quickly. And they almost get it on a couple of occasions, the first one coming off of Geeky's stick after he takes a shove to the face from Chara. He nearly makes it 4-3, but Sorokin comes up with the big save, and then another big save shortly after that on another Kraken shot. So thanks to Sorokin, this Kraken press does end up coming up empty as well. And then more bad news as Appleton ends up taking a tripping call to send the Islanders to the power play, with a chance to not only score to put this game a little bit more out of reach, but more importantly, slow down some of this significant momentum that the Kraken have been building ever since halfway through the second period. Now, I do have to admit that, at least for me anyway, going into this PK for the Kraken, I had a bit of a sinking feeling, considering that the Kraken had been playing well up to this point and finally had momentum going in their favor and at least an outside chance of making a comeback happen, that with how special teams have been going for the Kraken, the Islanders were just going to get a quick power play goal, put this game a little bit more out of reach, and just wash their hands of this attempted comeback by the Kraken. Fortunately, that doesn't end up happening, as just 30 seconds into the Islanders' power play, Barzal gets caught for hooking, and that ends the power play right then and there. We get to some 4-on-4 time, and then 30 seconds of Kraken power play time, all of which doesn't really lead to much of anything. So it was just about 30 seconds of power play time that the Kraken had at the end of that 4-on-4. They really don't make any effort whatsoever to do anything with it. And it is kind of funny how as soon as it ends and we get back to 5-on-5, it's like a switch flips, and just like that, the Kraken get a couple of high danger scoring chances, with Geeky having a couple of his own, just not quite able to get either one of them past Sorokin. The Islanders are able to press back a little bit, but it doesn't take long for the Kraken to get an odd man chance going back the other way, which quickly turns into a breakaway for Geeky. But once again, he can't beat Sorokin, and yet another Geeky chance unfortunately comes up empty at the last second, as he has now been robbed on a number of occasions in just these last 2 games, having one very good chance in the game against the Canucks, and now having at least 5 high danger scoring chances that I can think of alone in this game. Of course, as you already know, having seen the score at the beginning of the video, the Kraken, even though it did seem inevitable for a long time that they would end up getting that third goal, just aren't quite able to make it happen. They do end up pulling Grubauer with about 3 minutes left, and then with about a minute and a half left, the Islanders do find the empty net to make it 5-2, and that is where the game would end up finishing. So, like I said way back in the intro, again, it is a second back-to-back 5-2 loss for the Kraken in back-to-back nights, but with a completely different feel of how we end up getting to that final score of 5-2. With the Canucks game, it was a quick start, or not necessarily a quick start again with that goal 11 seconds in for the Canucks, but a good first period that the Kraken finish out with that 2-1 lead, and then they fall apart from there. In this game, it ends up feeling like, honestly, we watched 2 completely different games. It certainly seems like we watched 2 completely different Kraken teams. There's that team that we saw for the first 30 minutes of this game that came right out of the gates looking tired, slow, sloppy, and for large portions of it, completely disinterested in even trying to play the game. that ends up surrendering that 4-0 lead. And then there's that second team that suddenly showed up after Gord scored his goal halfway through the second that absolutely dominated the Islanders from that Gord goal all the way to the end of the game. And while, at least for me, having the team play well the way that they did in the second half of the game does have this one in the end feeling a little bit better, or at least certainly less frustrating than how the Canucks game ends up finishing, still having the team play terribly for the first half of the game and dig themselves that 4-0 hole against a team like the Islanders, it does make it near impossible to have that comeback happen, especially with how good the Islanders can be defensively. So hopefully the Kraken going forward can figure out how to harness that team that played in the second half of the game and leave behind that team that played in the first half. And if you don't believe me still on the fact that there were two different Kraken teams that played this game, all you have to do is look at the possession graph as provided by Natural Stat Trick, where there is a very clear point where this game turns around. I mean, honestly, I've looked at these graphs for just about every Kraken game so far this season, and this is the most blatant turnaround that we've seen all year. As far as what caused that immediate turnaround right after the Yanni Gord goal that the Kraken could hopefully learn from going on into the future, well, it could be any number of things, but the most obvious one, outside of the clear difference in effort that the team displayed on the ice between the first half and second half of this game, would be the passing between Kraken players, where in the first half of the game, all of their passes seem to either completely miss their mark, get bobbled at the other end of the pass, or if they did connect, they certainly weren't connecting tape to tape. If anything, they were connecting tape to skate, and then the Kraken player trying to kick it to their stick to try to keep control, which didn't always quite work. Anyway, some things to look for the future. I'd love to hear what you guys thought down in the comment section, what caused the Kraken to play so badly in the first half, and then what caused that immediate turnaround in your eyes for the second half that the Kraken could try to do better. Let me know down in the comment section. And with that, if you have made it to this point, as always, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until next time, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.